Some people say having the ability to see into the future would be amazing. The problem is, what if you can see into the future? You just don't know it yet. And then we take a look at a bizarre conspiracy theory uncovered by a nanny when he was working at a house of a wealthy family. He came across a strange channel on television. That is when he learned the elite do not watch the same television shows we do. Is it possible that the Illuminati has its own Netflix? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a ton of stuff to cover today. So first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command is one of our 7th anniversary live stream contributors. Everyone get on your feet and give it a 4. Oracle relationship. Yeah! She's walking on in. She goes, didn't you write your name down? I did, but I was running out of room. I talk to her all the time on YouTube. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's Oracle relationship. But Oracle, either way. You're like, get my name right. I gave you money, bro. Write my name down. I'm sorry. But thank you so much for your donation. You're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the merch store or the Patreon, totally fine, it really is. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Remember, September 12th, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Dead Rabbit Radio movie night. For more information, join the Patreon. You can join the paid tier or even the free tier. Either one. Join now so you can join us for Dead Rabbit Radio movie night, September 12th. 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Okay, let's go ahead, Oracle. Let's get this party started. Oracle, your name always reminds me of like a cloud. Like a bright, shiny cloud. So let's go ahead. We're going to go rogue this episode. We're not going to use one of our vehicles. We're going to steal a cloud car from the Care Bears. This is stealth advertising for Care Bears. The new Care Bear movie coming out this weekend. Care Bear, Last Rites. It's a crossover with The Conjuring. We're going to walk up, we're going to jack a couple Care Bears, trucking them in chokeholds. They're all, oh, now you're can't breathe bear. You used to be a pink bear, but now you're blue. We're going to steal a cloud car from Carolot itself. Oracle, go ahead, get your fingerprints all over this stolen vehicle as she takes us out of Carolot, all the way out to farmland. And I'm going to see if I remember what a Care Bear car sounds. I used to be a big Care Bear fanatic. Back in the day, before furries were a thing. Don't be calling me a Care Bear furry, because I wasn't. I just knew a lot about Care Bears and watched all the cartoons and knew the movies, and their cars go something like this. That's the most boring sound effect ever. It's gonna be some cloud sounding. No, it sounded like a car. It sounded like a car with like a bad starter. If I remember correctly. Huge Care Bear fan. Back in the day, I still have a Care Bear onesie. Maybe one day I'll wear that on a live stream. But not today. That day is not today. Oracle is flying the cloud car out to this farmland. We're about to meet two young men. We don't have their real names. We're going to first meet Paul, 17 years old. He is the one who posted this story. And he's out with his friend, who we will call Brian, who I assume is around the same age. They're out working on a farm. The year is 1985, is when this story takes place. You can imagine the hot 1985 sun beating down on these two young men. The hole in the ozone layer has almost completely ripped open. The future Tank Girl predicted is just a few years away. But these two men don't have to worry about Tank Girl. Right now they're worried about doing chores on the farm. And they're just out, moving bales of hay or picking strawberries or sticking stuff with pitchforks. Farm stuff. Petting pigs. Doing farm chores. Well, at one point, they're in this barn. They walk into the barn with their pitchforks. They're looking for something to poke. They're in there sticking it and stuff, moving stuff around. They're like, what'd you do to my farm, boys? All the pigs are poked to death. All my hay has been bedded to the point the nutrients are gone. You got it mixed up. They're like, ah. Anyways, these guys are doing farm chores. You guys know what farm chores are. feeding milk or drinking milk or milking cows, probably. Probably not in that order. You're like, you eat all the milk first, and then you're like, oh, what? We're supposed to milk him? You ate the udder raw. I wonder what would happen if you poked an udder. Would milk shoot out? Like if you were like super, super thirsty and you couldn't wait however long to get milk out of an udder. I'm assuming it takes a while because you gotta like warm up the udders. I'm guessing you rub them between your hands. The cow gets a big smile on her face. Woo! No, but I've seen it in movies. You go and it comes out super slow. I can just cut off the whole udder and there's just like a bowl of milk in front of me. I'm all burying my face in it. I'm bringing some Frosted Flakes. I'm sitting in the back of the barn just pouring it into my new udder bowl. Is the milk just kind of sitting there at body temperature, just kind of sitting in that udder, and if I just chopped it off with one fell swoop, would it just fall, and then I'd have like a good like couple, probably quarts of ready to go milk. Lots of blood, right? I hope you like pink milk. I hope you like pink salty milk. But if you were in a pinch, right, if you were super dehydrated, you haven't had anything to drink in like 3 days, you're about to die, you saw a cow walk over, are you really going to take the time to milk it? No, because it'll walk away. Anyways, they're doing all this stuff on the farm. You guys know what they're doing. But as Paul is doing these chores in the barn, he starts to feel miserable. Not like physically, not like he's getting sore or anything like that. He just starts to feel this impending sense of doom. Something really, really, really bad is going to happen in this barn. And as they continue doing chores in this barn, it's farm life, so you're doing it for hours. Nothing is quick on a farm. They're doing these chores, and the longer they go on, Paul feels more and more and more that something really bad's about to happen. He cannot shake it. In fact, it gets so bad, he tells Brian, dude, I gotta take a break, man. Like, I gotta take a break. Let's get out. Paul doesn't tell Brian why. He just is like, let's take a break. He doesn't say, I feel like something terrible is going to happen here. But Brian and Paul then go into the farmhouse. The nearby farmhouse. They're probably sitting there with a nice glass of bloody milk. Refresher before chores start again. Paul goes, hey, Brian, dude, I don't really know how to say this, but I gotta let you know. There's something wrong in that barn. What do you mean, Paul? Well, it's just like, dude, we've been in there for hours and I swear, like, I don't even know how to... Something really, really bad's going to happen in that barn. I just know it. I mean, I don't know it. I don't have any facts to back it up. But I just have this overwhelming feeling of doom that just... I feel smothered by it all. And Paul says, he goes, we didn't really talk about feelings back then. You never opened up to another guy. You never sat across from him and said, hey, I'm having this feeling. This emotional feeling. But he did. He just couldn't stand it anymore, so he opened up to Brian. But at the end of the day, they have to get these chores done. Now, this isn't their farm. They're visiting this farm. They live in town. They're doing chores on the farm, but they live in town. So, eventually Paul knows that they'll get the chores done. They'll go back to town. He can just forget about it. You would assume it was something wrong with you. An impending sense of doom can have a couple different causes, most notably anxiety attacks and heart attacks. They're often signs of either or, an impending sense of doom. But they also can just be your instinct kicking in if there's a threat, a life-threatening threat, especially when you can't see. Could be your brain trying to warn you of something. But all that stuff is for Paul to think about in the next couple decades. For now, it's time to go back to the barn and go back to work. So they do a little more work in the barn, and they're doing more work around the farm, and eventually their chores are done, and it's time for Paul and Brian to drive back to town. And Paul says, when we got in the car and we started driving home, I began to feel for the first time a little less scared. The feeling of that smothering despair was leaving him. And he goes, it didn't happen immediately once we left the farm. He goes, the further we drove away, the more and more it just kind of peeled off of him. Until by the time they were back to town, he felt back to normal. He no longer had that sense that the world was just about to fall apart at any moment and swallow him whole. 2 weeks later, there's more chores to do at the farm, but Paul does not go there to do the chores. Brian goes there. And I don't know if he went there alone. I don't know if he went there with other teenagers or adults, or I don't know. But Paul was not there. 2 weeks later, Brian was at that same farm, and he killed himself. It's a terrible story. And there's a couple different ways we can look at it. First off, this was posted online by someone going by the username Woodbarber. There's two different paranormal paths we can take on this story. One is Paul was seeing into the future, and he didn't know what he was seeing. He sensed that his friend would kill himself at that location 2 weeks before it happened. He was seeing into the future, and he couldn't do anything about it because he didn't know what it was. And that's a tragic story. The ability to see in the future and not being able to change it, it's a curse at that point. Imagine if it's your first time seeing into the future. Paul never says, and then from then on I was able to see the future. He never goes forward on that point. I would argue that if he did have the ability to see the future, you could shut it off. This would be such a traumatic event, especially if you didn't know really that you had it in the first place. Something like this could cause any sort of psychic powers that you were developing to completely regress. You would just shut it off. I believe I've done that with my ability to see ghosts. I really wasn't able to see ghosts until I was 17. The first time I began hearing them and seeing them. And it lasted for probably maybe, 10 years roughly. And then it began a slow fade off, and now really nothing. I'll get a sense from time to time, but I think a lot of that is just me being a scaredy cat. Like, I've seen ghosts occasionally, but I used to see them a lot. And I think it's because I shut it off because I was so terrified. There's that possibility. The other possibility is that there was an ominous force here that is at this farm and may even mostly reside in the barn. First, it was trying to overpower Paul. And it well may have, right? If he was there by himself, it well may have. But when Brian went back 2 weeks later, if he was there by himself, that feeling overwhelmed him. And he ended up taking his own life. Because of it, there's two hypotheses, right? That Brian may have been having, well, definitely if he committed suicide without a paranormal assistance, he was having some serious struggles, and he wasn't talking to people about it, and people didn't know. And he went to this location, and he killed himself. You know, if he was there by himself, he's out in the middle of nowhere. It's outside of town. No one would have been suspicious if he went there, and no one would have been suspicious if he was there for hours on end. It probably would be a day or two before someone went out to go see if everything was okay. Probably within a day, because farm equipment, someone could fall. But it's super interesting. Like, it's tragic either way, but either some sort of unknown compelling force caused him to commit suicide, which is tragic in a different way, murdered him, really, or that his own struggles led to the decision to kill himself, the unfortunate decision to kill himself. And Paul, did Paul see the future? Was there something there that was preying on Paul? We don't know. And even Paul didn't really give anything for this. These are theories that I was coming up with. Paul just goes 2 weeks later, Brian killed himself at that farm. He doesn't say maybe a ghost got him. He doesn't say maybe I was seeing into the future. That's all. He was just kind of telling a weird story. What I do think is especially odd, and I don't really know how to place this. I kind of was saving this to the end, and we'll move on to the next story, is that, remember, the ominous feeling started in the barn. But when they left the barn and they went to the farmhouse, he still didn't feel great. It wasn't until they left the farm itself and were driving away when the feeling started to leave, but it became overwhelming in the barn. That seemed to be the focal point. That's definitely where it started. But where Brian killed himself was right where Paul told him, there's something about that barn that's making me scared. Brian didn't kill himself in the barn. Brian killed himself in the farmhouse where Brian and Paul had that conversation about how Paul felt. Very odd. I find that detail very odd. If Brian killed himself in the barn, you could go, Paul saw into the future. He walked into a barn where 2 weeks later his friend would be dead. And that would definitely give you a sense of dread. Or some sort of specter originating in that barn, watching these two boys come in, creating this sense of impending death and doom and despair. And then that is where Brian kills himself. Brian killed himself in the farmhouse, exactly right where they had that conversation about how weird the barn was. I don't know how to fit that into this story. It's super weird. It's a super bizarre detail to it. Isn't it? I just thought that, I go, well, what does that mean? Something started in that barn and ended in the farmhouse at the cost of the life of a young man. And not only that, too, if this was a paranormal entity that did this, the questions that would plague the family for years. I never knew he was suicidal. That's creepy, too, right? That's terrifying, too. I think I don't know how many paranormal researchers are afraid of ghosts staging their suicides. I don't know how many paranormal researchers are afraid that ghosts or demons may make them kill themselves and make it look like a suicide. But I'll tell you this. That is on the mind of most conspiracy theorists. Think about how many times we've covered that on our show. What was that guy? It was a long time ago. Max Spears, I think was his name. I could be getting it wrong. We've covered twice now Isaac Cappy, right? That's the story of a young man. I'll put that episode in the show notes. People say that the official report is he killed himself. People say he was assassinated by Tom Hanks. Odd. The Max Spears story, he went to another country and he started coughing up this black goo. Was he assassinated by the government or was it a drug overdose? He did have a heroin problem, but that's the fear of conspiracy theorists. That's the fear of conspiracy theorists. There's really two fears. One is that you're going to be forced to kill yourself and it's going to look like a suicide because that just tears a family apart, right? If I walked down the street and got hit by a car, my family would be sad. But if I blew my brains out in my living room, they would be mortified. Everyone would be playing back in their head the last time they talked to me. I can't believe I didn't see the clues. Like, it would just really make people just question themselves for years, if not decades, for the rest of their life, right? Replaying that last phone call. Did I hang up too quickly? If I'd stayed on the line for 5 more minutes, would things have worked out differently? So the idea of of the government coming in, or some shadowy organization, the Marconi system suicides. We've covered a ton of this stuff. And it's terrifying to think that some goons could break in your house. Oh, sorry, Mr. Very Nice CIA agents, you just kicked in my door. You're not goons, you're very well dressed, but this idea that some knucklehead goon can kick in your door and put you in a bathtub and give you some drugs to either make you pass out, slit your wrists, whatever, right? It could be as simple as putting you on a stool and a noose around your neck and say, listen, you're going to jump off that stool. Well, we could kick it out at this point. It doesn't matter, but here's a note. Here's all this stuff showing that you killed yourself. It's the fear of conspiracy theorists. That is a big issue. The other fear, this isn't one that I necessarily have. I think that some conspiracy theorists might have this, but it was very interesting. You guys know who Tucker Carlson is. I don't know if I would call him a conspiracy theorist, but he has been covering a lot of like UFO stuff in the past couple of years. I'll see if I can find the link. I think I saved it on YouTube. Tucker Carlson made the comment that he does not own a computer. He does not own a computer for one reason. And listen, it makes sense. I totally understand what he was talking about. It's a little extreme, but I wonder, listen, he could have completely lost his marbles and gone off into the conspiracy theory deep end and only covers a little bit of it on his show. Because I don't watch a lot of Tucker Carlson, right? You see him pop up every once in a while in the YouTube algorithm. He doesn't own a personal computer because he doesn't trust that the government won't put child porn on his computer. He goes, they can't do that to me. They can never say that I have child porn because I don't own a computer. So I don't have a computer. I go, dude, listen, that's true. They can't plant it on you. That's true. And I'm wondering how many times he's heard that happen. Because I think he has like a YouTube channel now or like a Twitter show now. And, it's not some rinky-dink thing. He makes millions of dollars a year still. But he used to be a big Fox News guy. And before that, I think he was MSNBC or CNN. That's a long time ago. He used to be very liberal. Then he was very conservative. And I'm not for sure where his beliefs are now. If it's more conspiracy theory conservative or what. But I wonder how many times over his decades of work that he would be in contact with some source on some government story, and the next thing he knows, they're arrested for child pornography. The first time he'd be like, dude, that's sicko, that's gross. But the 18th time, the 25th time, he'd be like, dude, something's up. Right? Like something that every time, like I wonder how many times that had to happen. Think about how inconvenient it would have to be a content creator with no computer. I'm sure he has other people doing stuff for him, reads the newspaper by print. I'm guessing, but I was like, again, because of the fear of that. Now, that definitely could happen. I don't think Alex Jones is worried about that. I don't think most conspiracy theory content creators are worried about that. But I'll guarantee you, if you sat down at a one-on-one with Alex Jones, he would say, I'm afraid the government's going to kill me and make it look like a suicide. 100%. That'd probably be one of his top fears. So, interesting insight. It's funny. I didn't plan on talking about that, but I think paranormal researchers are more worried about demonic possession or something following them home. Or maybe researching a case and it not working out right for the family they're trying to help. Conspiracy theorists, it's a little more global than that. And I think their worry is for themselves and their family. But that idea that you could quote unquote kill yourself. And most people look at the newspaper and they're like, conspiracy crackpot shoots himself. Okay, you've been silenced. And anyone who does find your work realizes your work ends at you overdosing on fentanyl one night. And they go, oh, well, that's too bad. Killed himself. That's probably the number one fear of every conspiracy theorist. I don't think number two is having stuff planted on your computer. I don't even think that would be in like the top 10 or 15. Maybe you're being like, Jason, you're naive. They do that all the time. I wouldn't put it past, I'm sure government officials, I'm sure shadowy organizations do that a lot, but it's not in my top 5. Here's the thing, it would be terrifying if that happened. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be like, whatever, no big deal as I'm getting loaded into a police car. It'd be terrifying. I'm like, how is that on there? Why is that stuff on there? What is going on? But I don't think about that. I think more about me being forced to kill myself or killed in a way that makes it look like a suicide. That really is my number one fear. I don't know. I guess I probably shouldn't list. I was about to start because I do know what my number 2 fear would be, and number 3 and 4 and so on. I'm not going to list them off. I'm not going down that easy. I almost started to. But yeah, interesting between a conspiracy theorist and a paranormal researcher. Before we go any further, I do want to say that I made a bit of an error in this upcoming segment where I will be talking about the Illuminati, aka the 13 families. That is a term that conspiracy theorists tend to use. Illuminati is a catch-all term, which is what the general population is used to. So when I was recording that segment, I was saying that. Sometimes I'd use the term 13 families, sometimes I'd use the term Illuminati. However, this next segment I find so exciting. I find the idea so awesome that in my zeal to talk about it, I kept calling them the 14 families, which was the original name of this podcast, and also the name of a series of novels I was working on before I started the podcast. And I realized my mistake after I had recorded the segment. I go, oh my god, I called them the 14 families over and over again. That's not what they are. Conspiracy theorists are going to be like, what are you talking about? Who is the 14th family? Well, y'all have to buy my book to find out. It was a fictional novel. It wasn't based on real life. But anyways, so you're going to hear 2 things. One, you're going to hear the amazing editing skills I've developed over the past 7 years. Because every time you hear the word families in the segment, just know that I edited out the word 14 or 14th out of each time that I said that. It was not easy, but I didn't want to have to go in and like re-record just me going 13 families. So I just edited it out. So in the remaining episode, I will simply call them the families. You'll hear me say the Illuminati, aka the families. But also I feel like that's doing you a bit of disservice, because if I'm using the term families, I should tell you what I'm talking about. So I'm recording this really, really quickly. The families, aka the 13 families, is the theory that there are 13 different bloodlines that rule the world, and they have for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And the most popular version, the one that I see the most, and I was surprised how hard this was to find for today. I wanted to give you guys a list. This stuff used to be all over the internet. The 13 families were always listed somewhere. I had a hard time locating them. But these are the 13 families according to Fritz Springmeier. And if you don't know who that is, he's actually the architect of modern day conspiracy theory. Whenever you hear things about monarch, mind control, butterfly imagery, music videos with checkerboard floors, the sex kitten idea where Britney Spears and Ariana Grande and Katy Perry are all MK Ultra mind control victims, Rihanna, all of that stuff comes from Fritz Springmeier. All of that. He's the one who wrote the book, literally, on the idea of using MK Ultra, creating these dual personality mind control victims that are then put into the pop culture. And that's a huge part of modern main day conspiracy theory. So the 13 families that he has listed, and the 13 families that is usually referenced as who the Illuminati truly are, this is his list. And we'll go through this real quick. I'm just going to read them out, because I reference them quite a few times, and I say who and who isn't in the 13 families, so I wanted to give you definite names right now. These are the 13 families, according to Fritz Springmeier, that rule the world and are also known as the Illuminati. The Astor bloodline, the Bundy bloodline, the Collins bloodline, the DuPont bloodline. I can feel the infrared dot in the back of my brain right now as I'm reading these off. The DuPont bloodline, the Freeman bloodline, the Kennedy bloodline. That one kind of surprised me, honestly. The Lee bloodline, that's the Chinese faction. Like I referenced later in the episode, this is a very diverse group. There's 13 families spread across the globe. This is not a Jewish conspiracy theory. When I use the term bloodline, I try to make it very clear. I'm not saying it's this Jewish Zionist conspiracy theory. The 13 families are a global group. The Lee bloodline, the Onassis bloodline, the Reynolds bloodline, explains why Deadpool's such a hit, the Rockefeller bloodline, the Rothschild bloodline, the Russell bloodline, and the Van Dyne or Van Dune bloodline. And that Ryan Reynolds thing was a joke. I should say that everyone who has the same last name as Reynolds or Bundy. I mean, listen, man, they did have a pretty famous serial killer with that last name. But is he actually part of the bloodline, or is that just his last name? I don't think Ryan Reynolds is a member of the 13 families. I had to catch myself there. But anyway, so that is the setup. I wanted to read those names off to you. I hear the feds kicking down my door. Gotta hurry up and edit this and get it out, but I wanted to put this out there so you would have full context of what I was talking about for the rest of the episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. Speaking of conspiracy theory, oracle relationship, let's go ahead. Hitachi, the keys to the world, famous carpenter copter. We're going to ditch this cloud car with a broken rainbow wheel. Let the cops figure out who stole it. We're leaving behind this farm. Why don't you fly us all the way out to Scandinavia? That's a place, right? Or is it a culture? Like, can I go to Scandinavia? I don't think there's a country called Scandinavia, but there should be. But there might not be, and it might just be a culture. It might be like if I said the Deep South. There's not a state. There's not a state called the Deep South in America. You just go to that region, or the Middle East, or what have you. But if I say I'm going to South Africa, you know where I'm going. I'm not telling you the exact city, but you can kind of figure it out. You're like, where are the airports in South Africa? We're headed all the way out to Scandinavia, and we're about to meet a young man. I think his name is Frederick. because I did a little bit of digging. He has a couple different accounts online. He has a website called falsehistory.com, and he has all these articles about... You can kind of guess it, right? Obviously, if it's called false history, it's about fake history. Yeah, it's kind of interesting stuff. A lot of conspiracy theory content. But this particular one, I've never heard of this before. This conspiracy theory we're about to take a look at. Frederick is what we'll call him. The year is 1998. And Fred is working as a coach. I don't know what type of coach. Language coach? Maybe like tennis coach? He doesn't really say. He's just a coach. He shows up at people's houses and he yells, "Hut one! Go! Go! You call that a throw? You're out of here!" What in the world? They're all eating dinner, thinking super scared. This guy comes in coach uniform, really short shorts, a whistle around his neck. "What? You call that passing the potatoes? Knock it out of your hand. I'm the coach." He's just yelling at people. I'm assuming he's like a music coach or a language coach or something like that. Possibly a history teacher. He's like, "Let me tell you, kids." Once the parents leave, he goes, "Kids, you think you know who built the pyramids? I'm about to blow your mind." He's a coach. He was working with a woman who is a member of the Scandinavian royal family. And he goes, "We're in her house and we're walking around her house, lavish estate, right? She's a royal. And we're just walking from room to room. When all of a sudden something catches my eye on the television set. And I stop. And I sit there and I'm looking at the TV screen. I go, what? What he saw was a show that was filmed much like a documentary would be. He said that was the best comparison for it, either a documentary or possibly even a live feed. There was a narrator discussing what was going on the screen. And he goes, just based on the way the narrator was speaking, this wasn't some sort of sci-fi film. It either felt like a nature documentary or a straight up live feed. Like this was happening right now and the narrator was very calmly discussing the events. What Fred is looking at on the television screen is an object being assembled in space. He sees a huge set of jagged crystals floating there. And around these crystals are scaffolding or scaffolding-like construction built around it. And there are these small globe-like objects floating around through space with robot arms that were working on the scaffolding. It was like creating this structure around these large crystals in space. And Paul's mesmerized by it. It caught his view not because he thought it was some sci-fi channel movie, but because it was so real. He's staring at it. He's like, what? And that's when the woman says, "Oh, yeah, sorry, you probably don't know about that. You're not one of us, right? You're not, like, a member of royalty or anything." And he goes, "No, I'm not. No, I'm just a coach. I coach members of royalty." And she goes, yeah, I mean, that's cool, but, you know, obviously there's a difference between the elite and the rest of the world. She's very forthcoming on this. She's actually younger than he is. The term woman might be a little too generous. Young woman or old girl may have been better choice, but either way, she very calmly explains to him, yeah, there's two different types of television. There's television for you guys and there's television for us. She fills him in just a little bit, but for her, it's so normal. She just goes, yeah, basically you have your television that has your networks and all of your programs, and then we have our television, which is a different set of networks, a totally different set of programming. We don't watch anything that you guys watch. We watch all of our own stuff. Stuff like this. Okay, let's go. And the girl continues on her way through the house. Fred stands there for a moment and then follows after her. He said, listen, looking back, I should have asked more questions. I should have asked way more questions about this. Because she was definitely open to talking about it. She wasn't like, oh, that's just ignore the television set. She was honest with what it was. It was their television. It was their network, their program. Something the rest of the world didn't have access to. When I say their, not the royal family, the elite of the world. He goes, I really wish I should have asked her more. I really wish I had asked her more questions. I can't believe. But he goes, I was shocked. I was shocked because I was learning two huge things at once. One, we're building structures around giant crystals in deep space, or maybe not even deep space, but in space. After a certain amount of miles, it doesn't really matter how deep it is. Once you're past the moon, you might as well be in Alpha Centauri as far as our tech goes, or the tech we know about. Because I learned that, and then secondly, I learned that there's an entire information system that is not accessible by the average person. They get information we do not get. For the past 25 years, Fred has become obsessed with this and has tried to find more information about this elite television network, which nowadays would be elite streaming, like Netflix, where they have access to programming we don't. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying I believe in this conspiracy theory. I find it not only incredibly intriguing, but highly possible. This would not shock me at all if this was true. It's also fairly easy to do. There's that Venn diagram. There are those conspiracy theories that I believe in that I love gangster rap. I'm a huge fan of gangster rap. But I do believe that there was a group of people who got together to amplify the reach of gangster rap music for the private prison industry. That conspiracy theory totally makes sense to me. How feasible is it? It'd be kind of hard to do with no one ever putting two and two together. And then there are conspiracy theories that are really easy to probably pull off, but, I just don't believe in them. I can't think of one of those off the top of my head, but, here's one, the Maui fires. The idea that the fires were started by not necessarily space lasers. I guess that was the big conspiracy theory, but I think it was an unfortunate event. I think it was an unfortunate natural disaster. They've happened throughout human history. I do think, outside of space lasers, the idea of people setting fires on purpose to destroy Maui with some sort of terrorist attack, yeah, that's totally doable. It's not one that I think is that credible. I think it's just a natural disaster. This is one of those perfect conspiracy theories that is both. I 100% believe you could do this, and I 100% believe that you would do this. This idea, it's interesting because let's try to break it down here. I got a lot to say and not a lot of time to talk about it, but first off, let's put our conspiracy caps fully on because we're going to believe this thing to analyze it. And a lot of other conspiracy theories to analyze it as well. First off, and we'll use the term the Illuminati as a catch-all term, even though there's multiple groups vying for control. The families is usually the term used by credible conspiracy theorist researchers. But I use the term Illuminati just because that's the one most people are familiar with. And even the families have dozens, if not hundreds, of rivals around the planet trying to take over as well. It's this constant battle. I do believe in all of that type of stuff. I don't think there's one group of people that control all the world and everything's their fault or should be praised for. I think there's dozens, if not hundreds, of groups vying for control at different power levels. The idea, though, conspiracy cap fully on, that this Illuminati is using television and movies to brainwash us and to feed us certain social messages or economical messages or to gear us up for war. This either overt brainwashing, where they're just feeding us a message and we go, oh yeah, no, I believe that now because the television has repeated it so many times. Or a more subtle technological hypnosis type brainwashing, where there are signals actually in the programming to brainwash you, to hypnotize you, to take your mind over and make you go, I choose option A, but really you didn't have a choice. You would, if you were the Illuminati, you wouldn't want to watch any of that stuff, right? If you were the Illuminati, you would not want to watch brainwash TV. So it 100% would make sense for them to have their own programming. It would make no sense if they didn't. You'd be like, why are they watching this? Why are they watching this? They know that it actually has hidden mind control messages in it. Why would they watch this? So they wouldn't. And it's not like they have versions of Seinfeld that have all of the brainwash stuff stripped out of it. They wouldn't have Seinfeld or Friends or The Office or Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or Transformers cartoons or anything. Because the Illuminati, the conspiracy theories, all of that is designed at such a level that even minute decisions are made to influence the masses. You couldn't strip a show of these messages and images. There would just be nothing left. It'd be like taking a gangster rap album and removing the cuss words and the violent imagery. It exists, but you can't listen to it. It's just so edited. It's not enjoyable is the word I was looking for. So they would produce their own programming, which would cater to their tastes, but more importantly, not brainwash them. They also wouldn't need predictive programming, the idea that the Illuminati hides images and messages in our media to show they're going to do something in the future. They're going to show us 9/11 imagery before 9/11. They wouldn't need any of that because they would all know. We're talking that elite level too. We're not talking like Katy Perry doing songs about black magic, stuff like that. If she's involved at all in this, which I don't think she is, and I never thought she was, she would be below a pawn. I mean, she makes fine music, but I don't think she's an Illuminati princess. I don't even think she ranks as an Illuminati beggar. At the most, what's the term? Helpful idiot? I think that's a Soviet Union term. I could be getting it wrong. But I think she was a musician. I think people probably did put stuff in her music, but I don't think it was her, and I don't think it was anyone on her team. I'm not because I like her or anything like that. I'm not trying to defend her. I just don't think that anyone at that level is particularly elite enough. I would argue, honestly, that I don't even know if Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos would fall into this elite category. Even though they're the richest people on the planet, they're not bloodline elite. As far as I know, I'm sure somebody's done genealogy on those guys, but the idea that, I mean, think about what separates a guy in his college dorm working with a bunch of other people on Facebook, and then apparently, I don't know the story, but he then stole the code or whatever and started it. I think he is Jewish, people say, but that's not the type of bloodline I'm talking about. You can be Jewish and not a member of the families. Like, that's bloodline. That's bloodline when you talk about the families. I don't think, like, if you are... Let's take the best example of Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. You are a dude who comes up with an idea. I'm going to sell books. I'm going to sell used books online. That's what Amazon started off as. During the dot-com boom, I'm going to sell used books online, and he takes his company, and it goes forward. He gets investors. He starts selling other stuff. The company grows and grows and grows, and then it rivals Walmart. It's one of the biggest companies on the planet. Let's take the best version of that story. At what point do the elite let him in? They don't care about money. That's the one thing you have to understand. When we talk about the elite, it is not the rich. It is not Bill Gates. It is not Jeff Bezos. It is not Zuckerberg. It's not Musk. It's not Trump. I mean, he is related to a werewolf, so that is a bloodline story that we covered last week. But you gotta understand, billions, trillions, this money doesn't matter when you are in control of the world, or you're at such a level where you are vying for control of the planet. Peter Thiel will never be that level. Bezos never will be that level. 100 years from now, people won't remember any of these guys' names. Remember in history class when we had to read about all of the people who had built the railroads? David Copperfield? I don't even remember some of them. I don't remember any of them. That's what it'll be like 100 years from now. And maybe we won't even... Jeff Bezos may not even be talked about in history books. But the families have existed for thousands of years. So that's the type of elite we're talking about. Royal blood. Elite blood. And I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying that like these guys are actually better than us. But that's the way that they see it. Now you could say, well, you know, we look at Elon Musk's bloodline and it turns out that he had to... That may be true. You may be able to make a connection that he was related to the Habsburgs or something like that. I don't do a lot of genealogy stuff. But what I'm talking about is if you took a company and you ended up turning it into the biggest company in the world, you are not elite. You are not elite. That's the difference here. And that's why I always talk about, I go, you have the Illuminati, and then I always talk about other groups vying for control. You may have a Peter Thiel type guy show up and say, I have all of this money, I'm going to use it to fight the Antichrist, I'm going to build all this technology. You'll have groups like that pop up that are outside of the bloodline, and who knows, they may be successful someday. You may get all these outsider billionaires and eventually trillionaires to team up and fight against the Illuminati. But they are outside the elite. When we use the term elite, a lot of people just go, the elite, and they're talking about Elon Musk. He is not elite. He's the richest man on the planet. It doesn't even come close to the type of power that the Illuminati would wield. It doesn't. He would be a step above Katy Perry as far as they would look at their spectrum. So I don't think they would have access to these television shows. I think they would be watching the same brainwashing TV that we all did. Musk and Trump and Obama and Clinton and all of them. If you're not royalty, you are a commoner. If you're not elite, you're everybody else. I would argue that maybe, the royal family, Prince Charles, Prince William, it's King Charles now, Prince William, they probably didn't watch Friends. If this conspiracy theory is true, they weren't watching Friends. They don't sit down to turn on Netflix and check out the newest movie. No, they have their own streaming services with their own content. You go, Jason, you're talking about, you would have to have almost a second Hollywood to do this. Yeah. You would. And you could if you were that powerful. You could have your whole studio system that is run and operated by people that not only are loyal to you, they are you. They're your blood. And again, this has I know people are going to be like, the Jews when this episode drops. That is not what I'm talking about, just so we're very, very clear. Steven Spielberg is not a member of the elite. It's so far above that. So far past that. There's an interesting, I remember reading this a long time ago, and then someone brought it up recently, and I go, I don't know how true that is. I remember hearing about it a long time ago, just to show that it's possible. Did you know, and this may or may not be true, but I've heard this a couple times now, George Lucas, after he sold Star Wars, he made that movie Red Tails, because he's really into World War II, and he really wanted to tell the story about these about these black pilots who fought in World War II for the United States. And he made it and it bombed. It didn't do that well in the box office. People didn't like it. So what he's been doing since is he's been making movies and he doesn't release them. Apparently he's made like 5 or 6 full-length movies, fully cast, sets, everything. It's a real movie from beginning to end, a studio-level film that he never releases. He just likes making movies. But he's like, why do I keep releasing movies if everyone's going to say how bad it is? But I love the art form. And he'll call actors up, and he'll do auditions, and they'll come, and he'll be upfront with them. I'm going to pay you X amount of money. The movie's never going to get released. Okay. You get your film crew, because, at the end of the day, you're getting paid and you're working, and that's ingenious, really. True art. That almost transcends film. You're making a movie. Now, he watches it, and his friends watch it. It is an elite movie for his group of people. It is possible, and he doesn't rule the planet. I think he got $4 billion for Star Wars, and he gets tons of merchandise Star Wars money, and he's able to pull it off. He's able to make movies just for himself that him and his friends watch. Full-length, big-budget films. So if he can do it, if he can shoot 5 or 6 of these in 10 years, or however long it's been since he sold it to Disney, or since Red Tails came out, really, then the people who run the planet, or want to run the planet, vying for control of the planet, can easily do it. It's a fascinating conspiracy theory, and I think it's possible. I will say, going back to Fred, if you go to thefalsehistory.com, he does start to fall down a weird rabbit hole. I have to address this, because obviously if you go there, you're like, wow, Jason left out a big part of the story. We'll wrap it up like this. What he goes on to do is, when he's trying to find out more information about these networks, he goes to Grok, he goes to the AI, and he begins asking it questions, and it begins spitting out gibberish. So he believes he's found a ton of proof. He's found a ton of now deleted tweets from people saying, I have proof that the elite watch different programs than we do. I have proof that the elite have their own networks. But when you go to get more information from the tweet's deleted. I did go through his tweets. I didn't go through all of them, but I went through most of them. they all pretty much say the same thing. Most of these accounts never existed in the first place. I think they're all grok hallucinations. Which is kind of scary, right? Because a big thing the conspiracy theory community does look at is posts that are put up and then removed, because sometimes that gives us a clue if there's any truth behind the story, aka the conformers, which we've talked a lot about on the show. I'll put those episodes in the show notes. The fact the information gets removed so quickly, oddly enough, this podcast has not had that problem. Isn't that weird? We talk more about the conformers than any other paranormal show out there. I've heard Mysterious Universe mention it once, and then us. But all writings about it, I shouldn't say all, but 95% of the writings about the conformers, it's this alien race, supposedly the only real alien race. Which now that I think about it, remember what they looked like? They were silica-based. I just put this together. They were silica-based. They looked like big rocks or crystals. And what did, I did not even make this connection. What did Fred see on the television? The scaffolding around the giant crystals in space. Didn't even make that connection. But anyways, this podcast is the only thing left. I think there might be like a Facebook post or two, last time I checked, still about the conformers that are out there. There might be more now, but it gets taken down pretty quickly. And so things being posted and then removed can be a little bit of at least circumstantial evidence that the conspiracy theory is correct and someone's trying to remove that information. In this case, I think Fred took a swing and a miss. I think that he was reading grok hallucinations and thinking it was giving him more information, but it wasn't. It was just feeding. The AI knew the AI knew what he wanted to hear, and they started creating documents and content to give it to him. And we do see that. It's called AI hallucinations. I did think this was interesting. Again, this shows the difference between us, the ultra wealthy, not the elite, and then the elite itself. The ultra wealthy, and I guess you don't have to be too rich to get this, but you'd want to have some disposable income. There's a thing called Prima Cinema. It's $35,000 to get it set up. But once you do, you basically, the day a movie comes out of the theater, you can pay $500 and it will be broadcast right to your home cinema. So that's something that's out of the reach of the majority of the people living on this planet. Maybe a couple friends could, you're like, Jason, 35 grand is a lot of money. Yeah, but $500 a movie? You can afford that. I mean, with a couple people, like a frat house, maybe. But obviously for Jeff Bezos, $35,000 to him would be $35 for us. Probably be 35 cents, really. And the convenience of being able to just sit on your yacht and be like, Conjuring, Last Rites is out in the movie theater. Let's watch this on my yacht in the Bahamas. The scariest place to watch movies. That's not accessible to 99.9% of the population of the planet. But it is accessible to the ultra wealthy. But the ultra wealthy are not the ones who rule the world. They just aren't. They're not even in the same class. It'd be like comparing the guy who, and I'm not knocking anyone, but it'd be like comparing the guy who has the twin prop plane and flies around in the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of those guys out here. We just had a big fly-in here in Hood River where people fly their planes from all over the country to land and talk about planes, and then after a couple hours they fly away. It's a big event. That's something that's out of the reach of 99.9% of us. We will never own a plane. And even if we had the money to own a plane, we're not going to spend it on a plane and learn how to fly a plane and then feel so comfortable flying solo. We'll fly from Montana to a tiny town called Hood River to sit and talk about planes with a couple other people and then fly back. That's just a money and skill level that we do not have access to. And most of the world, throughout human history, most people will never, ever, ever do that. So we look at them and go, wow, look at those guys. They have this ability. They're flying above us. They're the elite. No, the elite are Apollo astronauts compared to those guys. It's not even close. It's not even close. The guy who's flying for fun, who's doing something that most of humans will never ever do, cannot fly in a rocket to the moon. They do not have the skill set at all. And they'll acknowledge that. They're not being like, oh no, I fly this little plane. I could totally fly a rocket. Where's the space shuttle? Let me get in it. They know they can. Those would be the elite. That's the level we're talking about. So us to a pilot of a little plane, we look at that and go, wow, we can't see the difference. For us to really, that's why we always call the rich people the elite. Because we think that's the ceiling. That's the floor. We're the basement. And again, I'm not saying that. I think we are totally awesome. I'm not putting this down at all. But just if I had to create an analogy, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, outside of maybe someone pulling up that one of them is related to the Rothschilds or one of them is related to, there's a big Chinese family, a part of the families. The families is a very diverse group. It's not all one particular ethnic group. They're not all Jewish. They're not all Caucasian. They're not all Chinese or Asian. They're spread across the globe. Someone might be able to say one of those names. I know it's going to happen. One of the names that I mentioned, they're going to go, no, that guy actually is a Habsburg. And, yeah, fine. If you can, but you understand my point. Not all of them are. Some of them did either come from nothing or come from a wealthy family. But still, that's nothing. They're not elite. They're not elite in the way that conspiracy theorists use that term. They're the floor. You don't know the names of the people in the 14 families. We know the names of the families, but we don't know every member of those families because you don't need to know them. They don't want you to know them. Fascinating stuff. 100% they would have their own network. They would not want all the gobbledygook that everyone else gets. 100, and it would be so easy to do. It'd be so... That's why, hats off to Frederick. Fascinating. I've never heard this conspiracy theory before. It's actually probably one of the most reasonable and logical. It's probably one of the most reasonable and easy to pull off conspiracy theories I've come across in a long time. It's not as glamorous as 9/11 was an inside job or who killed JFK or was the moon landing fake or anything like that. But it actually, if it is true, it does show that division. Imagine, and here's the thing, imagine if you had your choice, you could live in a country that was run by Barack Obama and Donald Trump and who was the guy? Oh, Joe Biden, I already forgot him, but Joe Biden and Clinton and all these guys, right? Bush, who would be considered elite in American society. It's funny I said that. George Bush, the Bush family might be the closest to that you'll start to find bloodline ties. I'm not entirely for sure. But as far as like the Clintons go, yeah, you might be able to say like his aunt was this, that, and the other thing, and it goes back to this old bloodline. But those presidents, I know they say presidents aren't elected, they're selected, and that there are like games you have to play in America. There's blackmail and there's ring kissing and all of this stuff, and I get all that stuff. But at the end of the day, Barack Obama woke up in the morning and watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Donald Trump used to tell his kids, hey, shut off the television. What's with the Ninja Turtles popping out of the sewer? I like pizza too, but you don't see me popping out of a sewer. All of the people that we see rule our countries for the most part, at least in America, they are high-level people in America. They are, if you believe they're selected, not elected, they are chosen to lead. They're like, you're going to win this election. At a certain point, that type of stuff may or may not be true. But their childhood, their young adulthood, they're normal people just like us. They're raised the same way as we are. Maybe in a richer neighborhood, maybe with a better quality television screen, but the same programming. So who would you rather have rule the world? The guy who at least has something in common with you. Maybe he is now aligned with shadowy forces. He made the wrong decisions. He has some blackmail material on him. He has to start doing stuff that he knows is wrong. Or maybe he believes is right, even though it's going to cause major catastrophes down the road. At the end of the day, there is a common bond. No matter how rich they are, you had a common culture. As opposed to someone who has never, ever experienced any of the same media you have. Probably hasn't listened to the same music, probably hasn't watched the same television shows, definitely hasn't read the same books. That would be an alien civilization on Earth. A group of people who have removed themselves from the masses. Completely. They've shut themselves off. They've become a Dyson sphere. of their own making. They're completely shut off from the world. They only ingest their own media, their own works of philosophy, their own music, their own books. It's absolutely insane, right? You start to think, that's a great idea for a book, too. Any aspiring authors out there, Brian Blackwood, Michelle Morningstar, they're not really there. They're not in conspiracy theory writers, but they're the two writers I know the best. Fascinating stuff. Imagine what this art would look like. What would a song or a movie look like if it was contained in this elite biosphere? It couldn't be inspired from anything that had brainwashing messages in it. It would be its own, or it would appear alien to us, I think. Because we'd have no source of context. You can watch a movie and go, oh, the hero's journey, just like Star Wars. But I don't think they like the hero's journey. I don't think the Illuminati likes the idea that one guy and a ragtag group of people can overcome impossible obstacles and destroy an all-powerful empire. That is the scariest story to the Illuminati. Some people say those stories are promoted to give people false hope, because again, they believe that everything that happens on Earth is controlled. Everything. And I don't believe that. I think that there are multiple groups vying for control, and that is a story that has stuck with us for a long time, and they hate that story. They hate it. Because it inspires people to fight back, no matter how many of you there are. It inspires you to fight back. The hero's journey. The hero's journey isn't just Star Wars, but the hero's journey is about transformation. But the idea that they're going to be a hero to begin with. Someone who fights against impossible odds and in the end changes the world and themselves. Imagine an entire world of media devoid of that message. Or any other cultural message from any other culture on the planet. A completely self-contained, self-sustained media apparatus only for the elite. Devoid of all social programming, all brainwashing. Fascinating. I love this conspiracy theory. I don't know if it's true, but it definitely could be. Fascinating look at what could be going on. Fascinating look behind the curtain. I just find it an absolutely fascinating and possibly true theory. I probably could keep talking about it, but we got to wrap the episode up. I think it's funny, too, that I was thinking about this as I was saying all that stuff. I go, the same episode where I go, the worst fear of a conspiracy theorist is they'd be forced to kill themselves. And then for the next hour, basically, I'm like, this is the truth. The families, the Illuminati. Jeff Bezos is a bum. They're all bums. Elon Musk is a big crybaby. They're all bitting their fists to their hands. They're like, oh, we're going to make you commit suicide. Oh, all right, Jason. Probably shouldn't joke about that. But I was thinking about that as I was saying all that stuff. Fascinating story. Really, really interesting conspiracy theory. Never heard it before. And it could 100% be true. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm so glad you listened to it today. Have a great one, guys.